Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Podcast.
What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Exhaust Notes Podcast, where every week we talk about some of the crazy things that Formula One has to offer. My name's Nick Engvall. I'm with my guys, Todd and Rohit, and we have delivered some of the hottest takes ever in regards to Formula One over the past 40 or 50 episodes. I can't remember what number we're on. Basically this entire season as we introduce this podcast. And it's time for us to own up to just how incredible we were at predicting the future. So guys, are you excited about this one or what?
Sorry, I had to mute Into the Road by Boyz II Men in honor of my late Minato.
Oh, I thought it was for Latifi.
Yeah.
No, what's your favorite go-to sad Boyz II Men song? Because I like Mama. Especially if it's
I gave it to you already. Into the Road. You can't
allowing
beat
you
that.
a back door. Because, you know, we have to continue the weird porn streak that we've had the last couple of
That's what
episodes.
she
Yes,
said.
thank you. And I know that when we did that Hot Takes episode, I believe it was you, Nicholas Joseph Engvall. I don't even know if that's your middle name. Let's just go with it. I'm feeling pretty froggy already. You had put a picture of what I feel was the sun's surface as the cover art for that episode. I actually had to look this up as Todd and you were chatting. I feel it's only appropriate that for this episode, we should put the planet Hoth from Star Wars, because my God, these hot takes, they believe in climate change. That's all I'm going to say.
Yes.
Should we start the punishment?
Man, let's do it. If you want to stop here and go back and listen to our hot takes fresh, we'll put a link in the description wherever you're listening to this episode. But we're going to go through them too. That way you know what we said. We did take notes just to make sure. But how do we want to start? Who wants to be the guinea pig here?
I got to jump in here. Ro, you just gave me a fantastic idea. Before next season, when we do our hot takes, we have to agree on a punishment for the one that has the most wrong hot takes. Kind of like a fantasy football style punishment.
I've got it. How about we take an unusually large amount of V's hot sauce because he's part of our extended family, and there's nothing I love more than corporate synergy. So maybe that's an early contender for that, but we can talk about it. I'm not opposed to it.
We'll figure it out. But we have to do some sort of fantasy style punishment for last place in the realm of hot takes.
I'm with that idea.
Okay. So let's just do this. My thought is we go over the hot take. I want to give the author of said hot take 30 seconds to walk us through what they were thinking about with regards to hot take. And then we will be the judge, jury, and executioner and let you know whether your hot take was scorching hot or frigidly cold.
Sounds fair.
Okay. And because Nick Engvall, this is the house that you built, we're going to go ahead and just go with you. So your very first hot take was Lando Norris will have 6 podiums with 2 wins. Defend your hot take.
I can't even defend that. I mean, I just thought McLaren would come more prepared for this season than they did. And Lando, to be fair, Lando drove what I think was like a potentially average car on the high end of potential. It is average, meaning. But yeah, it was really just me fanboying for Lando and hoping for the best.
But I will say this, the McLaren marketing blitz was probably the most prevalent because nobody else got a Lego set. Nobody else had that Google sponsorship. Nobody else had the 2 most charismatic men on the grid with Lando and Danny Rick. We were all smitten. We were all charmed by them. We were all hoodwinked. We were all bamboozled. So I get it. I didn't necessarily think either one of them would be as prolific as Nicholas's hot take, but I'm here to support my friend. Todd, go ahead.
I'm gonna add in Nick's defense here because they went from 2 seasons ago. They got a P5 in the championship, and then a P4 in the championship.
Right? They should have.
They were on their way. Their trajectory was showing that. And then it was like a down year for Danny Rick the year before. So we thought, okay, bounce back, new regulations, new cars. Holy shit, did that not go to plan. But that being said, if you want to kind of give yourself half a point, besides drivers in the top 3 cars, he had the best drive all year. He got the absolute maximum out of, and I think you're being generous when you say a midfield potential car. Like the fact that he was like the George Russell consistency level of P7, because he was always like qualifying P7 and finishing the race in like 6, 7, 8.
Yeah, and as I think about it, probably the reason that as a longtime race fan, the Gulf livery on those cars like instantly pulls me in like a tractor beam from, Hoth. But I should have known.
It's okay. Hey, you're in a safe space. You're amongst friends. Do we give Nick? No, we don't give Nick any points. That was atrocious. Next take. All right. I will say this. As bad as that take was, this next one was equally good. And once again, Nicholas Engvall, Yuki Tsunoda, and Mick Schumacher will score points. Now, what led you down this road?
Well, hope, obviously.
A new hope? Like in Star Wars Episode 4?
Yes. I mean, I feel like Mick Schumacher was the thought process around Mick scoring points was like Haas was coming out of the gates pretty, like they looked pretty good preseason to me for what we saw the last year, at least. With Yuki, definitely I just want to see him in F1. I like him as a human being. He's entertaining to me. So I guess there was a little wishful thinking there in just the more points Yuki has, the more possibility that he's around for 2023.
I respect it because you know what? You got both of those right. Todd, what do you want to add to probably one of the only hot takes we got correct? And now in hindsight, was this even a hot take? Dare I say lukewarm at best?
I was just trying to think back because we both, after watching the preseason, I think we did this prior to
we might have
testing. I feel like it was right after testing because I remember, and this is a bit of a foggy memory, but I remember all of us being pretty down on Haas and AlphaTauri after testing. We had that like whole Yuki with the fastest lap on one day, or like in the top, I don't know, 2 or 3 of the times on a certain day of testing pretty early on. And then it was because he had his DRS open, like, I don't know, 40 feet too early or something. So he got a couple of tenths there. But I remember us being pretty down bad on both of those teams. So that was, it's not a super hot take, but
we're in the positivity business. We're trying to inspire.
The fact that that's probably the only one that all of us got right out of the entire collection of hot takes, I think we should count it for ourselves.
No, I was going to say this. Spoiler alert, I read ahead because I'm the nerdy kid in class that likes to try to impress the teacher by reading ahead. Nick got a couple of these right. I'm just throwing that out there. So he's not going to be one that needs the points is all I will say.
So we recorded the original hot takes. We did a mid-season hot takes that also adjusted some of these. We didn't replace any hot takes. We just added more hot takes.
Yep.
But we recorded on the 15th or we published on the 15th of February. So I'm assuming we recorded like 13th or 14th, somewhere in there. I think that's pre-testing.
Preseason testing?
Yeah.
It could have been.
Either way, I do agree.
So then,
this was not a like scorching hot take. This was a safe play for my own heart and my own mental health.
And gentlemen, I just looked it up per Formula One schedule 2022. Testing commenced on February 23rd through the 25th.
So it was like the week before.
Roughly.
That discredits me even more because that means I still had hope for Haas.
Yes. So let's do that. Nick, you get +1 for that. Speaking of +1, I think you're going to get another +1 because your next pick was Charles Leclerc will win one race. Thoughts behind this? Probably an undersell on your part based on how the season went for young Charlie L.
Well, it depends on if you take it in a positive or negative context. As in, Charles Leclerc is only going to win one race, or he's going to win at least one race.
I will read this verbatim off, and it just says Charles Leclerc will win one race. There's not even a period or an exclamation mark at the end. It is truly an ambiguous sentence because Nick knows what drives content. And what drives content is ambiguity and wiggle room. So, Nick, wiggle away.
The only thing I could have done better to get more engagement on this take is spell something wrong. Charles Leclerc will win one race. I feel like that's a shot at me,
but I'm going to take it because I do spell things wrong. I'm the worst Indian ever when it comes to spelling. I've let a whole nation and ancestry down. But go ahead, Nick. Talk your shit.
I mean, that's the quickest way to boost your numbers on social media, right? Spell something wrong and you got 30 people jumping on your page to tell you that it's spelled wrong. So,
and there's nothing inherently more Ferrari than spelling something wrong on the way of hitting send on a really fire tweet.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely was thinking that he would... at this point, I didn't think he was going to be as good as he was. Like, I didn't think he would come out of the gates as strong as he did. So the one win was actually like, yeah, in a positive context. The fact that he won 3,
okay,
if you remove 10 races from the year, 15 races from the year, the fact that he won 3 is great. The fact that he botched 10 or 15 races this year with the help of his fearless Ferrari team. I mean, in hindsight, it's like super disappointing. I mean, after the first 2 or 3 races, I just thought Leclerc was going to give Max a run this season. Like, it really seemed like there was a chance. Because remember, Ferrari was one of the only cars that wasn't bouncing up and down, porpoising, the first 2 or 3 races. Like, it was still a little bit, but it was so minimal compared to everyone else, even the Red Bulls. So.
But don't you remember that preseason testing shot that they showed 1,000 times of the slow-mo of Carlos Sainz doing the porpoising? I feel like they had an equal issue with it, but they weren't affected like lap time wise by it.
Yeah, that's true. I do remember that. I mean, they definitely weren't like struggling. I mean, the Mercedes cars were like, basically bottoming out on the straights for no reason. And like, yeah, and the drivers are basically saying, hey, this is not safe for us to do. So, but I guess that leads us into the next hot take.
It does. And after going back to back like Lethal Weapon covers, welcome back to normalcy, Nick, because your next take was both Mercedes drivers will win at least one race and they will end up winning a third race. You just wouldn't commit to who. Thoughts behind this? Because for a while, I thought this was going to happen, especially how the last couple of weeks of the season panned out.
I mean, I know that we're all, somewhat Lewis stans, and we are very friendly towards optimism when it comes to Mercedes. But the fact that like Mercedes, I at this time looking at Mercedes and seeing like, okay, maybe they're not on par with everything else that's going on in Formula One. I still expect them to be a top tier team and figure it out. Like I don't feel like they figured it out this year. I think that they figured it out. Maybe by the end of the year, they figured some of it out. Right. But the fact that they didn't have 3 wins between the two of them, and they have, I mean, look, Todd has said many times, Russell is one of the most consistent drivers on the grid. Obviously, Lewis is one of the greatest drivers of all time. The fact that they couldn't manage even 2 wins between the two of those guys, I don't know. I still go back to a few weeks ago. Toto's just got to phone in remotely for every race, and Mercedes will win again. So I just want to see Toto on a beach next season.
He was sitting at home.
Toes in the sand.
But he's still going to be like texting him death threats the entire time from the beach. I'll kill you. But so this was a hot take that was added mid-season, if I do remember correctly. So I feel like at the midseason break, especially because of the upgrade they had right before the midseason break, they showed a lot of positivity, and all the signs and all like the journalists and saying and stuff were saying, they're going to come back super strong, especially Spa. They were all hyping up Spa that they were going to have a chance because of the upgrades and yada, yada, yada. And then they, Lewis DNF'd and George got, George got P4, so not bad. But they weren't anywhere near that, as we know how the season played out. But you just said like a pretty critical thing is like, or Ro, you did the last few weeks of the season, it felt like they were coming on song a little bit, and they should have at least had that too. That second win, what was it? Not Mexico. Mexico, they were slow as hell. What was after that?
For the big board, yes.
Brazil.
Lewis Hamilton's second home race.
Yes. Well, actually, didn't George win Brazil?
No, George won.
Wait, what the hell am I thinking?
No, you're
of?
right. George, I believe, won Brazil. And Lewis came in third at Abu Dhabi, as well as Mexico.
Yeah. It was Mercedes 1-2 in Brazil, right?
Yep. So, I think one more race in the season they could have had two, probably. It felt like that they were on that upward trajectory as performance-wise. So you were close, but still wrong.
So wrong. Speaking of so wrong, let's go to the next portion of the hot takes. And now and this one broke my heart a little when I read it back. And that was Nick being the eternal optimist that he is. Sebastian Vettel or Fernando Alonso will get one podium this year. And as I'm going through this list, there's probably a hot take I feel no sadder about than this one not coming to fruition, because I think we all were crying tears of joy, sadness, and a combination of both when it came to both of these guys, whether it be Vettel's dignified victory lap into the big... Actually, I don't want to say that because that makes it sound like he died on track, which isn't the case. But I think I had more joy laughing at all the points Fernando Alonso left on the table. But Nick, talk to me. How disappointed are you that this one did not come to fruition?
I mean, super disappointed now, right? We didn't know that Vettel was going to retire at this point when we were adding these hot takes. He didn't announce it until 3-4 races later, right? So, I mean, the last few races, I just wanted to see him and Lewis on the podium together. Like that was like kind of the final wish for his career for me, because those guys were so, they pushed each other so much for so many years that I just thought it would be cool to see. And it felt like it was a possibility there for a race or two. Right. But I mean, I also thought this thinking that Fernando would just retire at the end of the year instead of refusing to give up a seat. So, I mean, I don't know, by, 2028, maybe we can have the same conversation around Fernando. If he should be 50 by then, right? He'll be close to 50 by add another 5-6 years.
He'll be close. Yeah, that is a sad hot take now. Not so much for the Fernando thing, like you said, Ro. I actually enjoyed, in a slightly sick way, about him bitching about all the points he had lost. Not that I dislike Fernando at all. I think he's amazing, but it was bittersweet. Maybe just because I dislike Alpine. Maybe that's what it was.
Great.
But yeah, Vettel retiring. I was just checking the season results. The best he had 2 P6s all season, which is like that's great. I think any young driver would be stoked on having 2 P6s in like their rookie year or whatever. But for Seb to go out like that and then like just to stick the knife in one final time, they just botched the strategy in the final race. And I think it was awesome to see him still pissed about it in like the post-race interview. And he's like more worried about the strategy than he is about like his final interview. But Yeah, that's just
Put it
sad.
this way. I think Lance Stroll would chew his dad's arm off for 2 6th-place finishes this year.
Yeah. As long as it's not the one that cuts the checks, right?
Oh, that doesn't matter. You can attach that shit. Or we can at Bernie's it. Just hold the arm as it writes.
He's a billionaire. He could just probably buy a new arm.
Very Winter Soldier possibility where he can just have a cybernetic one. Speaking of terrible segues, let's go ahead and go to the next section on the hot takes list. And I believe we've entered the Todd Engvall zone. Oh, golly, I combined you into one super amazing.
We are one superhuman F1
Todd Yates.
talking head.
What were your thoughts when you said Ferrari were going to win the Constructors' title before even a single lap was raced?
I felt like they were going to build a super fast car, which they did. 1 lap pace, probably the quickest car. If you look at the polls, right? Charles Leclerc had like 12 poles. I think Carlos Sainz had another couple. So I felt like it was their year to come back after the down years and then the fuel gate strategy or fuel gate conspiracy, whatever. It's not really a term that wasn't ever used, but I just made that up. So I felt like they were going to build a super fast car and they were going to finally be on top with probably one of, I thought at that time, maybe the best driver pairing on the grid. And they did if they could not botch the strategy or break or explode the engine or plan E for explode.
Or talk to the drivers as they overtake somebody.
Yeah. That's where I was. I think it was a hot take at the time. And now seems like an even hotter take. Pun intended.
I will say this, though. To your point, Ferrari would be very happy, not knowing the context of the season, to end up in second in the Constructors. It's just, my goodness, it's the most tragic second I can think of in a long time. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they do next year, because now they have the heaviest weight on them all, which is expectations. They had relatively no expectations this season. And that's why I think, as much as this hurts, if they go through the entirety of next year with the expected inflated expectations of being a competent, fast car, and then they shit the bed the way that they have this season, I don't think they can come back from that. Call it now as like... Mm-hmm.
So, question and semi-news related, we found out today that Harry Potter and Ferrari have parted ways. And is that going to put more expectation on them or less?
I think internally, they still expect to win every race that they ever set foot on. Externally, and they've got probably the most friendly media presence in terms of you have people that will always scapegoat for them. I think they'll be fine because it's also going to be predicated on who's their new hire. I think unless they get an established property within Formula One that commands respect right off the bat, I think it's going to be viewed as almost a transitional year because you've got to get this new person up to speed in what is probably the trickiest job in all of Formula One, which is being the principal for Ferrari.
Absolutely. The Chamber of Fear. No, Chamber of Fear.
Don't you dare.
I'm just going back to like 90s Ferrari and then like mid 2010, like 2010s Ferrari. They had the very much the Enzo Ferrari way of doing things. It's like, I'll kill you if you don't win kind of thing. So it was like, win or you're fired. Like they've had 5 team principals since the turbo hybrid era started. So the most of anyone on the grid. So I just think, I feel like they're setting themselves up for failure and hurting themselves by doing this. Because if anything, the expectation was Bonatto to get them back to the front, which he did, and then they sacked him for it.
Do you think well, technically he quit on his own, right? But
well, that's in the media. He's
and as a diabetic,
resigning.
I quit eating sugar on my own as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. But to be fair, looking at just this season, aside from like Ferrari's storied dedication to, Italian race engine or, team principle and all that, the things that happen within the Ferrari pit and team and all of that stuff, I wouldn't expect anyone to survive that. Like how many times did we hop on the podcast and say, yeah, Charles and Carlos drove an amazing race, but the strategy was completely botched. Charles and Carlos drove amazing, but the car blew up. Like there were only maybe 3 or 4 actual things that were like Charles's fault or Carlos's fault, right? Everything else was obviously team, I just feel like it had to have been chaos behind the scenes in order for those things to continue to happen and never address them in a way that made them better. So I just don't see him surviving any kind of season like that. I don't think anybody would have, to your point, like he definitely brought them to a much better place than they've been in the last 4 or 5 years. But it was more on the disappointing side of the scale than it was on the, accomplishment side of the scale, in my opinion, with Ferrari this year.
I think that's fair. Quick, before we leave this topic, give me a name that you would want to take over Ferrari in terms of ushering them back into an era of competency. I'm not even going to say an era of winning.
Ross Brawn.
I mean, that would be amazing. I just don't think that happens. I don't think he yeah.
No, I mean, he was in charge of what, like 6 titles under Schumacher, something like that. No, he already said like he's out on Formula One. I think that was announced this week. I think the only respectable choice is Fred Vasseur from Alfa Romeo or Sauber or whatever you want to call him. He's the only one that's been linked to a position so far. If they promote from within, I don't see that going well, even though they have a bunch of obviously very smart dudes over there. They need some Toto or Christian politician that kind of rules with an iron fist, I think, to be successful. And Fred Vasseur seems kind of like that no bullshit kind of guy.
I agree with that.
I think he's the only.
I just don't think he's charismatic enough. I think one thing Ferrari desperately needs is somebody to take and shoulder that blame the way Horner can, the way Wolff can. I don't know if Fred Vasseur can do that because I don't think he's had the enough reps as the principal of Alfa Romeo. I don't think anybody outside of those two are Teflon enough to take on whatever ineptitude Ferrari shows and then just spin it the way that only those two can. And in fact, I would probably say Christian Horner gets a blank check. That's how I would operate things, because if I'm truly Ferrari and I'm truly winning, let's make the Red Bull a little uncomfortable. And the best way you can make Red Bull uncomfortable off the track is start taking away their talent. And it's something we've noticed with the engineers, but we've never seen that type of poaching of a manager or a driver in the modern sense, at least that I'm aware of. What do you guys think?
I think that's really interesting.
They trade Charles Leclerc,
Perez and Horner?
No, not even Perez and Horner, just Horner. They find another driver. It's like the 2000.
I just want to let the record show that
trading a coach
Todd
for a
Yates
player
is the one that's kicking Danny Rick out of Formula One for next season, because if they get Leclerc, I'm assuming Sergio Perez becomes a reserve driver. And then what does that leave Daniel Rick doing?
That would never happen. If anybody is safe at Ferrari, it's Charles Leclerc. He's the prodigal son. Yeah. He is beloved. But yeah, I don't think to respond to that, Horner is Red Bull. He feels like he's been there since the beginning of the team when they bought Jaguar. I think he cares more about his legacy as Red Bull at this point than he would about being dominant. Even if he saw like a huge weak link in Red Bull and they were going to be shit for the next 5 years, I feel like he would care more about his legacy.
Yeah, because if he goes to another team, he can't be like, oh, we just make energy drinks. We don't make cars.
By the way, I think that is some of the finest Jedi mind tricking that I've seen a Formula One principal try to employ. You would be absolutely right, but except for the fact that you've won 4 titles with Seb, and now you've won 6 with Max, and outside of Lewis, you are the most consistent winner of the modern era of Formula One. So BS to you. You're more than just an energy drinks provider at this point. But I like the us against the world mentality you're trying to instill within your group, Christian.
We're still the underdog, but we've been whooping everyone's ass. But it's basically that's the thing though. Like they spend more than probably 5 of the teams, you know, like their budget is nowhere near bottom tier, or like we're just struggling. We're struggling to make this rich energy, you know, octane booster work for us.
I was going to say, even the name of your team, Bull. When has a Bull in any sort of sense been an underdog? Unless we're talking about Ferdinand the Bull. And really, that's just him being an emotional underdog.
Also, you have 2 teams on the grid.
2 teams.
Potentially 3. We'll get into that. But
Nick,
I wanted to say one thing.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Okay, if there's one thing I hate, it's a show that goes off the limits. And if you guys know anything about me, when I try to facilitate this show, it stays very much on track limits. All right, next topic.
I want to say one thing, though. The thing that Ferrari is missing is that person that is like just, I don't want to say ruthless, but like, I think Binotto is amazingly entertaining. He seemed like a really good dude, but you need the fire. You can't, like, you know, Christian Horner is going to walk over everyone unless you're Total Wolf, right? Like you need that person that's going to get in the ring with both those guys. If you're going to put a car at the front of the grid consistently, you need to play the politicalness of Formula One. You need to be in each of their heads thinking, you know, what they're thinking about and predicting all those things. And I just don't think that Binotto had that mindset or that drive. I don't know if that's the right word, but I don't know.
Todd, last word.
They had that. In, I just looked up his name because I couldn't remember it. Arriva Bene, which is like Italian. Like he is Italy. They had Maurizio Arriva Bene prior to Binotto, and he was Mr. Rule with an iron fist. Started in 2014, and he was like cutthroat, political, all that crap, and it didn't work.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, did it not work because you're talking about like Lewis and Mercedes coming into their run of greatness, or did it not work because of the drivers that they had at that time also, right? I just think that like we talk a lot of shit about Christian Horner, but like at the end of the day, what he does gets the job done, right? The same thing with Toto Wolff. It's not easy to navigate these egos. It's not easy to navigate this sport because as much as you might think that it's 20 guys with massive egos in cars, the entire sport is filled with nothing but egos. Like it is the most egotistical thing on the face of the planet. Just look at any grid and watch people walk past, you know, we're too good to talk to anyone on the grid mentality. And I think that's why you need to have somebody that's like at least willing to, I don't know if fight back is the right thing, but like, you know, you need to be able to drop some gems on the, you know, the virtual timeline that is the Formula One starting grid.
I need you to lead the league in Bless Your Hearts. Because right now, Christian Horner does that. Toto Wolff did that for a little bit. Whoever you are.
Was that a shot at Brad Pitt?
That's not
saying I'm too good to talk to anybody on the grid?
I would never do that. Brad is a native Missourian like myself. We have a lot of things in common. We're both generationally handsome men. We're infinitely charismatic. We both love Formula One. But we also love moving on to the next topic, which is if there isn't anything more indicative of Valtteri Bottas losing his place in the running order, it's this. Todd, you said he was going to qualify in podium for 2 times. How did that go for you?
It did not go well. However, before Alpha shit the bed, I will remind you of his race finishes, which was a P6. He DNF'd the second race. A P8. No, 7. Sorry, P7. A P5. A P6. Another P. Or no, P7, P6. P9. And then 11th. And then 8th. Or, sorry, 7th again.
Yeah.
So
he was on the trajectory.
He was thereabouts in the beginning of the season before Alpha shit the bed and gave up on development or just developed their car in the wrong way. He was there, and he still has his chops if he's in a fast enough car. We already know about Terry. He's much like the Ferrari car, that he's very fast over one lap, but usually falls apart in the races. So that's why I went for qualifications. And if he has a car underneath him, I think he's there. Obviously, they went downhill in the second half of the season, but I wasn't too far off. I didn't hit it, but
we had to quit it. So we'll move on. I think this next one might be your penultimate one. It is. You had proclaimed that after a decent run of form, Mercedes would leap over Ferrari in second place in the Constructors. What we know is, alas, it was Ferrari somehow managing not to shit the bed, as they have shat the bed all throughout the season. They remained in second, and Mercedes was in third. I thought this was one that was going to come to fruition, Todd. So walk me through this.
I mean, like we talked about with their going into the summer break and their pace upgrades, whatever you want to call it, all of a sudden, and then everyone hyping them up over the summer break. Maybe I got a little bit of the bug there. But to be fair, they definitely closed the gap, if not overtook that on some races. Definitely. They still had their track-specific weaknesses, just like every other car does, but they definitely had big track-specific weaknesses. So they were, I think, if they had a little bit of better showing in Mexico and the final race of the season, they could have been there.
Could have.
And if Ferrari shit the bed like we thought they were going to for the rest of the year.
I really wish that Russia wasn't going to be Russia and we would have got a 23rd race, because I think that would have solved a lot of these hot takes and actually made a lot of them come to reality. Because I think if you do include one more season or one more race in the season, Mercedes shows their class. Nick, how do you feel about Mercedes and their overall positioning with regards to how they started this season versus how they ended?
I mean, I just want to confirm that if we did have one more race, all of our hot takes would be 100% on, regardless of whether that's feasible or not.
Saying, but,
that's all that was missing from our hot takes.
I don't think Lando can podium 6 times in Russia, though.
In Soviet Russia,
nobody needs to know that.
Take you.
I mean, I thought Mercedes was going to be way better than they were by the end of the year, especially like at this point, halfway through the season. I was like, okay, they're going to turn it on now. Like Todd said earlier, we expected big things in Spa, but yeah, I mean, I guess like I'm happy that Ferrari didn't completely shit the bed.
We've got to stop making that a full-on phrase of Ferrari shitting the bed. That's like, It's almost turning into one of those stereotypical Native American names, like runs with scissors. Actually, I don't know why I said runs with scissors, because scissors weren't a part of. Shout out to all our indigenous friends.
I mean, the good thing would be like if we had a website and we wrote all of these things instead of spoke them, we would own the search results for Ferrari shitting the bed, which would probably get a lot of search. We'd probably get a lot of traffic.
Maybe not.
Oh. We could make merch of just like a red shirt with a bed and
I'll
shit in
one
it,
better.
and then we
have
would
a
just
red
sell
adult
that.
diaper that just has Ferrari, but spelled with 3 R's, so that way they can't, and we can say it's a parody, so then they can't sue us, because that's the name of the game in modern day merching. Just don't get sued. Shout outs to Nathan Fielder and Dumb Starbucks, because you truly set the bar, my dude. Speaking of setting the bar, this last one, Todd, I think this might be the most outrageous, sassiest thing you've committed to the hot take sheet. So I will just say that you said not one, not two, but 3 teams would be over your beloved McLaren: Alpine, Haas, and Alfa Romeo. Now, when the dust actually settled, it was just Alpine over McLaren. So in a way, I feel like this is a win for you, but I don't think you're going to get the hot take point.
This is just like this is Taylor Swift writing a breakup album. That's what this comes out as, right? This is right when we found out about DR getting the boot. Or like it pretty much was finalized at that point, and it turns out that they actually took the picture in Austria in the midseason break anyway. So this is this is just pure spite. Cheers. I was sour on my papaya, I should say, at that time. And I mean, the run of form, like, honestly, if Lando didn't have the season that he had, then could have happened. But Alpine did it, brought me justice. I miss you, Danny.
I was going to say, if you could compare, which one of Taylor Swift's exes would you compare McLaren to? Because obviously in this sick, dark, twisted fantasy, Danny Rick is Taylor Swift. Like, is McLaren Tom Hiddleston? Is it Harry Styles? Is it like who are we dealing with here? Let's try to get that female demographic to truly cross over the way that only I know you can, Todd Yates, international sex symbol.
The fact that you just rattled off so many of her exes off the top of your dome there is impressive and scary.
That's the name of my bio.
But I will respond with a question. Did she ever date John Mayer?
Yes,
because I feel like that happened.
It's
100% John Mayer.
That's 100% John Mayer. I think.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is that what you're going to say?
100% John Mayer. Because it's
please lay down reasoning that will make sense. Because I got
like
nothing.
John Mayer and Taylor Swift had the dating, and like, you know, usually when you have two, incredible artists or an incredible driver and an incredible team, they come together to create something even more amazing. But in the case of John Mayer and Taylor Swift, the partnership only resulted in one song and her only singing basically a backup hook, which, I mean, arguably she's one of the most popular artists in the world. And John Mayer was still like, I'm not going to let you actually sing a verse on this. You can sing backup for me on this album, but just this one time.
You cute, though, is what you're essentially saying Taylor Swift got relegated to.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I was just going to say this. I feel in the McLaren-Danny Rick relationship, McLaren was a bit parasitic. They were trying to siphon off some of that fame and some of that charisma that we have Danny Rick to account for in terms of bringing popularity to the sport. And I think they successfully transferred that over to Lando, because Lando is now the crown prince of all things Formula One goofiness and meme-worthy. So good job, McLaren. You took the life force out of our man right there, but who's to say? Maybe he's going to make waves next year as the Red Bull reserve driver.
I mean, God bless John Mayer. He did the same thing. Taylor Swift's going to be on the album. You're going to sell a hell of a lot more albums. But then when you realize that Taylor Swift wasn't really on the album.
Quick prediction from both of you. Do you think they will sell Danny Rick reserve driver merch next year for Red Bull?
I don't think they will, but they absolutely should.
Oh, that's the epitome of, hey, you get to sing one hook on our album. Like give him one t-shirt. Just give him one.
He'll get one outing and free practice. He's going to be over at Red Bull like, it's me. I'm the problem. It's me. Just waiting for his seat to come back so he can speed.
Which will lead to a great debut album from Danny Rick when he retires from the sport.
My favorite Taylor Swift song is the one where the music video is her living next door to the cute boy and singing to him through the window. I just picture Danny Rick being Taylor Swift with the guitar, looking at Christian Horner lovingly, longingly, and be like, let me in. She wears t-shirts. I'm cheer captain and I'm on the bleachers. I don't know. Like, I've already kind of shown my ignorance in the matter, but let's make this happen. Otherwise, I'm not going to call him the Honey Badger anymore. I'm just going to call him D Swift, because at this point, that's who he is. He's Danny Swift.
Okay, I got nothing
And
to
nor
say
should
after
you.
that.
I think let's let that die some more. All right, now we are finally on to the last third of the tour, which is my hot takes. So do one of you guys want to give me the riot act the way I gave you to, or should I just kind of self-interrogate? All right.
Yeah, I'll give it to you. So you started with, I think, a pretty hot take in the realm of the history of Formula One, but it felt like maybe not so hot of a take at the time because we had so much unknown with the new regulations. But you did say that we're going to have 8 different winners this year, and even went on to name them with Hamilton, Russell, Verstappen, Perez, Leclerc, Sainz, Norris, and Gasly. I'll give you the results, and then you can plead your case as to what that was, or what you think, where you think you went wrong, let's say. We had 5 winners. They were Max, Perez, Sainz, Leclerc, and Russell. So I give you the floor. How do you defend having such a statistical anomaly of 8 different winners
That's
in
fair.
one season?
I've been podcasting now with Nick Engvall for what feels like 4 years. And that youthful, exuberant enthusiasm that he has for every facet of life, some of that rubbed off on me in this particular hot take. Now, as we all have the gift of hindsight, we can know that we cannot count on anything AlphaTauri with regards to this year. So that eliminates Gasly. I also like to think there was a bit of a contact high next to Nick Engvall when he made the bold proclamation that Lando Norris was going to have 6 podiums with 2 wins. That probably accounted for one of the wins in my hypothetical scenario. Sainz got me the 1. I'm surprised, actually, he even got one considering how bad Ferrari were, which that's another dead horse we've beaten into the ground probably for the past 50 episodes. Leclerc did great. Perez, we expected that as the number 2. Verstappen obviously won as many as he did and set the new record. Russell, I thought out of the 2 Mercedes drivers, he would be the dark horse to get the win over Hamilton because everything we heard about Lewis this year was, he just doesn't have it. This is a transitional year. But that being said, you're always going to give the vindictive ex-champ an expectation of winning a title or winning a race. I'm sorry. He hasn't done anything yet to win the title, but he should have won 1 race. I stand by my 8. Maybe if we run this scenario in terms of simulation 9 more times, maybe I'll get 2 scenarios where there'll be 8, but I was okay with that.
I think we all had higher hopes for Pierre at the beginning of the season.
We did. It was a love fest, especially from your side with the Yuki Pierre bromance and how much you were in love with I feel like Honda crept into that relationship a little bit, so it was a little bit of a menage.
The same thing happened with Lando and Danny Rick and McLaren. I mean, how can I not love 2 guys just broing out and racing fast cars?
Look at this when it comes to Formula One drivers.
I thought you were going to go in a totally different direction with how can I not love 2 guys just going.
2 guys, 1 cup. This means different things to Nick Engvall.
Two drivers, 1 steering wheel. All right. So I'll accept your answer. I think it was not a scorching hot take, but I felt like at the beginning of the season there was so much unknown that it was a solid take, and you weren't that far.
So my question for you, Rohit, is would you go into 2023 with that same prediction?
I think I would go for 7 winners. And I think I would take Gasly off as my de facto sacrificial lamb because I think Hamilton will win one next year. I expect all 5 of the gentlemen to win the race that we expected. So in this case, Max, Perez, Sainz, Charles, Russell. And I do think Lando Norris, it's a question of when and not if when he wins that first race. So I'll go with 7 for next year.
Okay.
Like it.
Remember
I'm
that.
already committing it to the old Google memory bank up here.
All right, moving on. You had
this was just
Probably I feel like this in the preseason wasn't a hot take, but turned out to be a very hot take. So you had 3 teams will score 0 points: Williams, Alpha, and Haas. And the results were obviously no, because all the teams scored points. But not only that, I just took a peek at the driver standings. The only person to drive this season that didn't score points was Nico Hülkenberg, and that was only for the first 2 races of the season, driving for Aston when their car was an absolute pig. So I feel like the universe gave you a big no, because we even had Nick DeVries, who only raced 1 race.
The universe definitely gave me a middle finger on this one. I think it does kind of articulate what we expected with these new regulations, which was more competition. In this case, I made the error that I thought more competition meant more winners at the front end, not realizing that the more competition meant the points would be distributed across all 10 teams. So I will gladly take that middle finger that the universe is giving me, because at the end of the day, these are the 20 best drivers. Actually, let's say 18 best drivers. Hi, Lance. Hi, Nicholas. That should get you at least that bare minimum of a point. So I stand corrected by it. I don't know if there's any way I could revise this hot take for next year's episode, but knowing me, I'll probably say at least one team will score no points next year. But it's early. That's what we call a tease in this industry. So you'll just have to listen to the next 40 episodes until we do our next hot takes episode to see if I actually stick to my word on this.
I love it.
Nick, anything to add on or any in response to his somehow preseason hot take?
I mean, honestly, I think it's a credit to the rules. It's a credit to the FIA, as much as, we've been dogging on them a lot this year and saying they should break up with Formula One. The fact that so many teams scored points I can't remember the last time that almost every driver scored points. I mean, every regular driver has scored points. That's wild to me.
How about this as a hot take? Next year, all teams will score double-digit points.
Oh, so like 10 points or more. Yeah, that'd be a can take. I mean, Williams exists, right?
I mean, you got pretty close to that this year, right?
They got 8 points.
No.
They had 8 points, and I'm convinced if Nick DeVries was in half the races that Nicholas Latifi was in, they would get the bare minimum of those X amount of additional points. Like, having him removed from their team will guarantee you at least 5 additional points. We'll have to do the math to see. Okay,
so no, that's not as hot of a take.
That's my specialty. I make them seem like they're hot takes, but when you actually take a second step back from them, you realize it's the most lukewarm thing ever. It's very tepid. Shout outs to Wordle, because that was a Wordle a couple days ago.
I didn't know people
I'm
still
playing
played
that until the wheels fall off. Like, I'm all in. I play Octurdle, Duodurtle, which is like 12 Wordles simultaneously. I play Podle, which is like the NBA one. Do
you play F1?
No, I
Wordle?
haven't accumulated the skill set needed for that. But there's one that I forgot what the name is. I think it's called Loodle, which is all dirty words. So the word was minge a couple weeks ago.
They're always British. That's why the fucking F1 one is so hard, because like one was tires, and I was like, oh, I got this, and then guessed tires wrong 6 times because it was the British spelling.
If I may, like, what happened? And you're like, okay, it's not I. Let me throw A in there. Like tires, it's a Welsh term.
Tears is a form of weight, right? Weight measurement.
That weight collapsed under you if you couldn't spell tires with the 5 additional guesses, my dude.
Oh, fuck. No. It's T-I, Jesus Christ, I can't even talk. T-I-R-E-S.
Oh, man.
We gave you bonnet. We accepted that.
Right. The only reason I knew that term was that infamous South Park episode with Oprah, which, please don't sue us, Oprah. That was just a parody.
Do you like fish sticks? All right, so moving on. This one was close.
You
And I
guys
feel
made fun of
like
me for this one
it
because
should have
you're
been.
like, whoa, Ro, this is a bit too much. 5 drivers? Yeah.
We did. I will take full acceptance of making fun of you for that because this was, I felt like at the time, just silliness. It wasn't even a hot take. It was just verbal diarrhea on.
At
what's
best,
gonna
this
happen.
is a solid BM. So
But-
I would just like to take that for the record.
So your hot take was 5 drivers will leave the grid at the end of the season. You didn't name which 5, but we did have Seb. We miss you. Danny Rick. Thanks for being a friend. Mick Schumacher. Okay, whatever. And Mr. Nutella himself, Nicholas Latifi.
I mean, I thought Yuki would have been one of the culprits as well, but you know what? I'm happy for Nick's sake that he gets to stay on. I also was flirting with the thought that it could have been Fernando Alonso because, I don't know, but then El Plan reared its ugly head and he's going to score 5,000 points next year for Aston Martin. I mean, the only other ones that could be vaguely interesting is maybe Lewis took a gap year, but we knew that was never going to happen. Guan Yu Zhou, my linguistic arch nemesis, if I've ever had one, I thought he may be due for a chop, but no, for the most part, he was pretty proficient and pretty professional as a driver. And as I'm just kind of going through the list right now, Mick made a lot of sense, but I almost expected Mick to kind of put Magnussen back into retirement, and in actuality, the opposite happened. So, like I said, I kind of stand by my 5. I just thought I was fortunate in the sense that 4 people decided to leave the grid. But if Seb hadn't made that call midway through the summer, then yeah, I think I would have been properly ridiculed for saying 5. But as always, Seb, thinking of his fellow human beings, decided to throw your boy Ro a bone.
Weird question. Do you think, because you just said a very key word there, decided to leave the grid, do you think had the season finished as badly as it started for Danny Rick, would he have decided to leave the team?
Absolutely not. I honestly think going into this season, he expected to be on par with Lando, if not beat him, because it goes back to one of the other overarching themes this episode and this sport has always kind of prided itself on. It's a sport of egos. It's a sport of kings and kingmakers. And if Danny Rick came into this season thinking, oh, I don't know if I'm going to hack it and I'm going to be 85% the driver that Lando is, he already lost before he set foot in the car. So if that was the case, he should have retired as opposed to making us go through the song and dance of watching 2 of my favorite people in the world come up with mea culpas every week to say, no, it's not you, Danny Rick, it's us. We're just not viewing you properly. We're just looking at things through our papaya-tinted glasses.
Yeah, well said.
R.I.P. All right, so I'm going to graze over this next one because there's no
That's got to be the
result.
last one we talk about.
Okay, so I'll go past that one then. Carlos Sainz will outscore Chuck Leclerc in the second half of the year. Final results, Chuck 158, Carlito
And this was one of those
117.
mid-year predictions because I think at the time being, it felt like it was a very balanced duo. I know there's certain people in the Discord at High Iron Trev that like to die on the hill, and right now they look like they're going to live on that hill, which is Charles is significantly better than Carlos. But if we are truly looking at last season, Carlos gave him a run for the money, and that's saying something because of the fact that, as Todd mentioned, Charles is a prodigal son. He can literally do no wrong. Carlos is visiting. The best comparison is Carlos is maybe the Jon Snow to Charles Leclerc's Rob Stark. But as we know, Rob Stark was the one that lost his head, and Carlos was the one, or John was the one that somehow made it through the entire series, even though he got killed that one time. But I digress. I'm getting really nerdy here. So I still maintain that I think Carlos Sainz is a better driver, and your traditional metrics like points and stats say Charles Leclerc is that, but I'm not going away with my gut on this one. I think Carlos is better.
I'm okay, actually, with this hot take. I felt like that was a fair hot take. Like, I would have kind of guessed the same, and I think if had it not been for the DNFs that we saw with Carlos, we had the Japan crash. What did he got taken out in the U.S. race
Yep.
at Coda? Wasn't he taken out?
Yes,
There.
I think he was. And in fact, I'm looking at the amount of DNFs Carlos had this year. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 through the halfway part. And then he had 2 catastrophic ones in Japan and USA at the end of the season where, to the point that we were making, Charles Leclerc outscored him, but I think that gap was not as bad as it could have been had it been for the fact that I think also Carlos was qualified in podium positions for, I believe, both Japan and USA when he lost those races by getting DNF'd.
I mean, Rohit, I'm gonna actually give you the point on this hot take because in my mind, Charles Leclerc gets a 50-point deduction for whining about being not able to pass. Not think about second place. Think about the championship. Think about.
Please, guys. Guys.
Can't do that.
Can I say that the MVP for me this year was here's $1 million TikTok account idea for somebody, taking all the out of context Charles Leclerc radio clips from this season and then just applying them to everyday life. There you go. Like, I feel like you could do wonders with that because he was probably the greatest podcaster that never was. He was the prince that was promised because of like the blood curdling scream. And I will say this, going back to a reoccurring theme we've also had, which was talking about Ferrari ad infinitum and ad nauseum. We talked about the fact that, whoever their principal is in the future has to have a killer instinct. I'm thinking about it from the perspective of the 4 pillars of any race car team. You've got the 2 drivers, you've got the principal, and then you've got the support staff, which is your pit stop, your strategy. I would say this, and I hate saying this, but for Ferrari, the only one that I could say has a true killer instinct is Charles Leclerc. I don't think my guy Carlos has it in the abundance that Charles Leclerc does. We damn sure know it's not that support staff because if anything, what's the opposite of a killer instinct? They're huggers. They want to hug every opportunity. They don't want to drive a stake in the heart of it. So,
little Italian kiss on both sides.
Give it a nice Eskimo kiss. Who Eskimo kisses adversity? I'll tell you who. Ferrari support staff.
Oh, man.
Okay. And the last, I don't know how you ended up with so many hot takes, bro, because I think I'm missing one. Because Nick had 5, I had 4, you have 6.
Did I take one of you?
You're just an overachiever. You're just overachiever. But the penultimate hot take for Roe is 3 podium places for non-top 6 team from now until the rest of the year. And I think you meant like top 3 team, but top 6 driver.
Either way, I was wrong because I think with the exception of Lando Norris getting a 3rd, I think every single race only had podiums from the top 3 teams, which is a damning indictment in terms of competitive parity.
Didn't we have Fernando on a podium?
I don't think so. I could be wrong.
In the first half of the year?
No, because that was one of my hot takes, right?
Yeah, the only...
Oh, wait. Yeah, you're right. That was one of your hot takes. I could see, we both thought that, apparently.
But, I mean, that goes back to what we're saying. So, I guess, moving away from the hot takes theme, just for this 1 second, because you guys do a great job indulging me. Now that we have the entire context of the front 3, the midfield, the bottom however many, did you guys think this was truly as competitive of a season as Formula One would want us to think at the start of the year?
Ooh, that's a big question. With the exception of Max's dominance, yes.
But that's a big exception. I agree with you.
But like that's the way it is every time there's a rule change.
So the more things change, the more they're the same.
Kind of, but like if you look at 2021 was kind of an anomaly. There's always like convergence with development, right? So like the teams always get closer, and I think we'll see it even closer next year. But somebody always gets it more right than the others do, especially during a rule change year. So, and I didn't say necessarily Red Bull's dominance because if they had 2 Checo level drivers in that car, it would have been a lot closer with, with Ferrari there. But Max's dominance aside, I think it was successful. The rule set was successful in the parity that we wanted to see, especially like look at the midfield battling. We talked about it in several races this year, like cars going 5 wide into a turn in the beginning of a race in the midfield because they could follow each other. And then we had all those overtakes. And what was the stat that I said from the last race of the season? It was like more than that. There was more overtakes in the last race of the season than the previous 2 races there combined, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's unfortunate, but this was a great season outside of Max being so dominant, right? Like I said just a bit ago, right? I can't remember the last time basically every driver scored points. Like that's kind of absurd. And, that's what you want. I think that the biggest maybe asterisk to that is, we're coming off the absolute greatest season of all time, potentially, right? The high of last season, either side of what you're on, whether you're a Lewis fan or a Max fan, that was as like just incredibly gripping as you're ever going to see in any sport ever. Like, I just don't think that there will ever be, like as a fan, I can only remember a couple of seasons where it was like close into the last 2 races, but to have it come down to something and to have the energy of millions of new fans, it's impossible to back that up, like, look, even Jordan broke his foot his second year, like it's just how it works. So, I mean, I think next year is going to be great. I think that, Mercedes and Ferrari will move up and give Red Bull a little bit more of a run next year. And the rest of the midfield is going to be a lot tighter, even with the changes. I would say the first few races there might be some challenges because you've got some kind of fresh faces in the cars. But this year, they gave us a lot to talk about, a lot to be excited about. To Todd's point, like, as like long time fans, you look at it a little bit differently than just being like, oh, Max dominated the whole year. Like, yeah, that is a little disappointing if you're not a Max fan, but ultimately, like when you get to see 4 or 5 cars, fighting for, let's say half of the race, like a majority of the time, these guys in the midfield are literally going back and forth for the entire race or for half the race or more, and stretch that out over more races this year than we've had before. To me, I think it's definitely moving in the right direction with all of this stuff. I think the only thing that could improve is obviously if Red Bull gained a third team, which is,
You know what? When we hit that 33 million new viewer mark, I think that's when we get that third team.
Right. Well, we got to remember that Red Bull is just an energy drink maker. They don't actually make cars. So,
but Nick, they make more than 3 flavors. They should get at least 3 flavors of race car. Just my hot take. And on that note, we should leave you guys.
Way to cap it off.
Oh,
nicely.
I see what you did there. Because if they were in a bottle, we would cap it off. Well done. That's the thing, Tom. That's the thing. They make cans. And we're about to kick the can down the road.
I mean, maybe like a 10th of a point because we had Audi join this year, and they're from Germany, which is part of Bavaria, which also includes Austria. Which
can we normalize? You know how in football they have the Gatorade shower? I think for every single race from now until Christian Horner decides to hang it up, whenever Red Bull wins, he needs to get doused in Red Bull as a celebratory win because he's not living the brand enough.
Technically, that happens
every time, though.
So they always do a post-race team photo. all the crew is holding a Red Bull can.
No, but I'm saying like you get that
And-
industrial tub, just fill it up with.
just a giant 50, like 20-gallon Red Bull container.
Take
and just,
one of those crypto chambers
agree.
that I'm sure Dr. Helmut Marko has some poor young driver just growing out of, like one of those test tubes, and just fill that with like hot passion punch Red Bull and douse Christian Horner every time they win.
What if if a team spends, let's say a lot on catering, they have to run their cars on Red Bull instead of using traditional fuel?
I like it.
Might level.
they'll come out with a new flavor that has an octane rating.
Right.
Or here's the other punishment.
Hey,
One race next year that they win, they have to go down as Team Four Loco, because the Four Loco is the antithesis of Red Bull in my mind.
that's very accurate.
It's Four Loco is comparable to Zima, right? Like, can we make that final note?
Oh, wait, hold on. Zima was
I don't
delicious.
know. I was in the 5th grade when Zima came out.
Okay, that's just showing my age. But in high school, Zima with a couple of gummy worms in there.
That might be the most high school drink I've ever heard you reference, Todd Yates. Yep.
Yeah, yep.
All right.
Well, we did things differently.
What
in
was life
Albuquerque.
like before the war, Grandpa?
Back in my day, we walked uphill to school both ways.
Well, you see,
or whatever
when
the hell
Taylor
the saying
Swift
is.
released her first album,
Yep. All right, we got to shake the haters off.
Guys,
Nick,
this has
where can
been
they
an
find
amazing
you?
episode.
Because they shouldn't be at this episode at this point.
This has been a fun one, though. This has been a really
Yes.
fun one. I'm looking forward to next season's hot takes. Honestly, we should have figured out a way to do hot takes for the off season, like, who will be dating Taylor Swift, who will be writing songs about Danny Rick's departure from McLaren, who's going to replace Bonato.
Now, I will say this. I was at friend of the pod and one of our other co-hosts at Sneaker History, Robbie's house over Thanksgiving, and we did a 5-round draft of who we think Tom Brady is going to date next. And if you join us on our Patreon, I'll share that news with you, because ultimately at the end of the day, we are salesmen and we need you guys to like, rate, subscribe, all the things that we do, including joining our Patreon.
I don't know how we get any better than that. So we might as well call it good and tell them how to find us.
You can find me on Twitter for God knows how long at Roheezy. You can find me on all the other social medias. And I've joined Be Real. I just joined Hive. I joined something called Mastodon. I can't figure out what the hell that is. I thought that was like a heavy metal group, but always the same username, RohitM13. Todd, where can they find you?
It's on Instagram at dadshoe.jpg, shoe spelled SHUE. I'm still on Twitter as long as it exists at TEZF1. And I will not be on any of those social media platforms because I'm older than dirt and can barely work my phone as it is.
I, on the other hand, will be on all platforms somewhere or another. I also tried Mastodon and realized that I should probably just go to Spotify and listen to them instead. And then I did join Hive. I've been on Vero for the last few months. I am on.
Are you on Me Hente? Like,
no, and I am not on. We me be me. I don't remember what the others are.
Yeah,
anyway, you can find me at Nick Engvall on all the platforms, or at Sneaker History, or at Exhaust Notes FM, or at Crown and Stitch, or many other ventures. But most importantly, Exhaust Notes FM. Make sure you give us a rating on Spotify and give us a review on iTunes so we can get some more listeners and spread more hot takes, blow some more hot air next season. We appreciate y'all. We'll catch you on the next one. Peace.